Hello everyone, this is Stephen again, and in this second part of a two-part video of animating this swinging pendulum, I'm going to add more life to this pendulum. And in the first part, I just swung the pendulum and I didn't give it any kind of inertia and change it really to make it dynamic, right? We had some overlap and gave the swinging pendulum, this whipping action. So this is the way it looks right now when I left off on the previous video, which is pretty good. It just shows sort of like a swinging arm, something that might happen when a character is walking. But we're going to add more life to this and give it some flair, right? So the very first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to select this control that's at the top if you're using my pendulum. If you're using others, there could be others that you select the top or other ways that it can be moved. But in this one that I'm providing, you can select this control at the top and that allows you to move it back and forth, right? And so I had keyed it in the previous video. I keyed it once and just kind of left it there. A couple other things that I did is I did create a shot camera, which is what I normally do. That's a rendering camera. The perspective camera is the one that I use to kind of move around the scene and kind of look at my animation. But I add a new shot camera in the scene so that I know what's going to look like when I render and I can frame it up appropriately, right? So a couple things about this, just really quick, is you can go ahead and change the numbers here to kind of rotate it around. So if I don't like this Y rotation, I can set it to 0 and it kind of sets it in the middle, and set this X rotation. I can move it this way, right? I can move the camera this way and position it. But if I select the camera there, I can go to its actual values and change the actual values. So say I wanted to change that to 0. So it's, right down the middle of the X. I can do that, right? So you can change those values and then you can key them, right? So I could actually key that camera, but I'm not going to because I'm not going to really need it to move. So when I go to play blast, I'm going to move to this camera. I'm going to go back to my perspective, and this way I can kind of get around my scene without messing up the same view that I'm going to render or play blast from, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start out by positioning this. And what I like to do is add a little anticipation in the movement of this. Now, most mechanical things don't have a lot of anticipation. You don't see like an automotive robot that actually backs up before it moves forward, but we're going to add this to give it some sort of exaggeration and doing some anticipation. And then we're going to add some follow through and overlapping action as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to, say, frame 5, and I'm just going to back it up just very slightly. And then I'm going to press S on the keyboard. So you're going to see it kind of backs up. And the pendulum's already moving because I first keyed it where it was straight up and down, and then I had it swing. So what I'm doing is I'm backing up just to add a little anticipation, and I can actually back this up in the pendulum swing as well, and I'll add that. But I'm going to get this movement a little bit more forward. So what I want to do is it's going to back up, and then what I'm going to end up doing is having it move forward. So I'm going to just go to about frame 30, and I'm going to move it forward. And the reason I choose frame 30 is if I select these other controls around each segment of this pendulum, you'll notice that I wound up at right around frame 30 where this bottom segment starts to come back. The top one is already starting to return and the middle one has already started to return, but the lower one it's just about to come back. So I'm choosing frame 30 because it lines up where this one starts to sort of rotate back the other direction. It rotated up, now it's going to rotate back, right? So I choose that one and I'm going to key it. And I'll show you exactly my reason for that. So it's going to back up just slightly, so it's anticipating, and then it's going to move the other direction. So I anticipate back to the left, and then the movement is forward on the right. And you can see that already it's trying to pull that pendulum with it, right? And then when it gets to here, you already start to see it sort of slowing down, and this top arm starts to swing back. And then as it stops, the arms continue, or the segments continue to move forward, right? So it's doing that, right? And now I'm going to move it back the other direction. And I'm going to kind of time it so that it does sort of the same thing. So let's look down here, and I'm about 60, but I'm going to go, let's say about 55, and I'm going to move this to the other. Whoop! I just want to move it back and forth, so I'm going to move it this way, and then I'm going to press S on the keyboard. Go to my shot camera and make sure that I have it sort of at a nice position where it was going to do that. And the same thing here. I just want to kind of make sure I'm not going out of the frame staying inside the frame and also getting kind of close to it. So I'm going to press S again to keyframe it there on 30. So now I can kind of look at what's happening as it backs up, it starts to move to the right. As it slows down, these start to react and start to swing the other direction, and then it swings back. And you can see it just pulls the rest of those segments along with it, right? It looks like what's happening is the platform is pulling these other things back with it, right? And I haven't touched the pendulum swing yet at all, right? So it's swinging this direction, and then when it stops, right, these start to react. And that's kind of the point that I want to get at, is it has to be where this ring has already started its return when this stops, right? So you've got that ring right there, and then this stops at, 55. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back and put it back in the center and have it stop. But I'm going to kind of have it do a little bit of settle. So I'm going to go back to where it was in the center, and I'm going to just middle mouse and drag that over to, let's go 75 and key that, right? So it's keyed right in the center. I middle mouse and drag so that it holds that value from that key, and then set it right there at 75. So if you go to 55, it's going to go back to 75 and then just dead stop. But some robots will do this, like some mechanical things will do this, where it goes beyond its point and then swings back. And I'm going to make sure that I do that. So I want it to go just sort of a little bit beyond where it started from. I'm going to press S on the keyboard. Now I'm going to go, let's say I go to frame 85, and I'm going to back it up just a little bit more, right? And then I'm going to go to frame 90, and let's use that same position to frame 90 and press S on the keyboard. So now you'll see it kind of settle a little bit. So it swings this way, it goes beyond, it comes back a little bit, and then it settles back to 90, right? So I think this needs to go back this way just a little bit, because I don't see a lot of movement between these two. And I think this goes too far. So I'm going to pull that back and press S on the keyboard. So I just want it to settle a little bit. I don't need it to do too much, right? There we go. Now I'm going to play that forward and see what that looks like. Boom, boom. Swings back and settles a little bit. You can kind of see it sort of settles back and forth. And, if you kind of ever sit in a car and are driving and you hit the brakes and the car stops, you're gonna feel it kind of rock back and forth. And that's sort of what I'm simulating here, is that it's rocking back and forth a little bit, right? You can see it goes beyond, it comes back, and then it settles back to center, right? It comes somewhere in between there. So I just do that in a few frames, and you can see when I play that through how that reacts and sort of centers, right? So I've got a pretty good thing going with the pendulum when it does that. And all I just wanted to have the pendulum platform pull the pendulum along to kind of create the motion and then have it stop, right? I just needed to do that once and stop. And now I'm going to have the pendulum slow down. I'm going to have it gradually lose speed and come to a full stop. Now I can't do this within 135 frames, which is kind of what I set it to. So I'm going to expand this out to 200 frames. I'm going to see, I might add more, but we'll see if I can kind of get it to settle down from there, right? So I can then go to each one of these rings, right? And you'll see that I had one, at 150, and I can keep adding more. And I can already see that I'm probably going to be adding a few more frames, but we'll see how that works. So I'm going to go up to Window. I'm going to go to Animation Editors and Graph Editor and pull up the Graph Editor here. So there's a couple different ways that I can do this. And the first thing that I'm going to do is, since my swing, when I select this, by the way, if it doesn't automatically load, you can go up to List and Auto Load. So if you select that and you don't see it show up, right? If I select this and you don't see that show up, you can just go to Auto Load or Load Selected Objects, right? Go to Auto Load. But one thing about that auto load is when I select multiple controls, you're going to see those auto load up here. And then when I select a key, it sometimes pops up where it selects them all, right? It selects all the different ones. So if you turn that off and turn it on, it usually doesn't do that. So I can select one key, and I can't even force it to do it right now, right? So when I select one key, it just is selecting that one curve, right? So sometimes you'll see when you select a curve or you select a key, it brings in everything. It shows all these different curves. So if you turn off auto load, that usually stops it from doing that. But when you don't do that, then when you select a new curve, it's going to hold on to the previous one if you don't have auto load on, right? So that's how that works. So I'm going to look at where I'm going to position this playhead where, this sort of stops rotating. This is where it's going to pick up speed. It's going to swing the pendulum. And then after this is where it's going to slow down. So I'm going to go and select all these curves that are below the pendulum. I can even select the top one to see it too. But so that's the point where the pendulum stops. So it swings this way, swings that way, and then it stops. So right after that, I could probably leave this one. But right after that, I need to start making these smaller. So those are at the same height. So I need to bring these down. So I'm just middle mousing and dragging down while holding shift to constrain it. And then I can just start bringing these down to minimize, how much it's swinging, right? So this is one swing, this is the next side, this is back to the first side. So these are the same, right? Those can be fine, though. Those are fine. I could probably bring this down here because it stops there, but I think I'm going to keep that. And I'm going to bring this one down, and I'm going to bring this one closer. And so each future one is going to be less and less. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these keys, and I'm going to copy them. And see where that 75 is winding up right there? And that's on this lowest one. So I'm going to go right to there, and I'm going to paste. And now I'm going to have to bring those, and you just pasted in all those keys at the end of that. So I'm going to drag this up to make it smaller. And this has to be closer to the center line. The center line is 0, straight up and down. So these keys need to become closer to the center line than these keys. And these should be closer to the center line than these keys, right? So it's as it's swinging, it's crossing through the center, right? So right now it's on that side, right? If I bring this here, you're going to see that those are close to being down the center line, right? On this one, it would be straight up and down. So each one of these needs to come closer and closer to that center line, right? Until eventually they're going to get to the point where they're, right along, because that's where it's going to stop. So I can do this again. So I went to here, I copied and pasted. I'm going to go to this one. I can paste again. Oh, I'm going to select them again. So let me move back. And I can copy from here, copy, and I'm going to paste. And it again moves them because I pasted these keys into these. And then move up, and then move this one down, hold down shift, get it really close, and then select these. And I'm going to, let's bring these all the way kind of almost flat. So what I could do is then just zero them out and then press S on the keyboard, right? And now it should have made all those directly flat on that key. Whoop, not on that one. I need them all the way down here, sorry. So let me move here, and I'm going to make sure I select that one, and I can change it right here. I can change that to 0. So that's the value of that key. That's the frame of the key. That's the value of the key. And then hitting 0 and hitting return to make sure it's accepting that, right? So it's all going to wind up at 0, right? So I'm going to just bring this down so we can kind of see our animation at the end. So it looks like my final animation is going to end up being about 271. So I am going to set my end range. Actually, I'm just going to set my end frame at 271. It'll update the range, right? 271 and return. And you'll see it updated the range as well, right? Or it's updated the end frame as well. So that's the end frame, and that's the range. So that's the end range. So if I move that, you're going to see that that range changes. But right now I want the range and the end frame to be the same. This is the first frame and the first, the part of the range. So I can move that range up, but I'm starting at frame 1. Right? So now let's play this through and look at it. So it swings back, stops, settles, and now this takes some time to slow down and will eventually stop. Right? Now there's one other thing that I want to do to this, right? Because there is a little bit of odd stuff going on each time it swings to each side, right? See all that where it kind of does this? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of delay to each one of these lower rings, not the top one, but these, right? And here's how I'm going to do that. Again, go back up to Windows, Animation Editor, Graph Editor, and I'm going to load in all these rings, all these controls, right? And whoop, I didn't get one of them. Let me select them again. That one, that one, that one. Go to the graph editor, right? And now you can kind of see where it starts off intense and then goes a little bit slower. So there's a couple things that I'm going to do to all these additional keys, right? I'm going to actually end up duplicating this one and this one, and then give it a little bit of delay, right? And just kind of let it hold on to that for a little bit of time. And that's going to add a little bit of drag into this, right? So I can actually copy that, and then I can come here and then paste that. And then I'm just going to set it right here. Hit F on the keyboard so we can kind of see this a little closer. And what I'm doing is I'm just sort of letting it hang on a little bit longer, right? Same thing here, copy, go 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe. And then I'm going to bring it down just a little bit and then twist that down. So it's going to hang there just a little bit longer. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I'm not doing it to the first one, I'm doing it to the second and third one. Copy, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, paste. And I'll just grab that handle and let's do this, bring it down just a little bit. So it just kind of, again, it's just hanging on a little bit longer. Copy, 1, 2, 3, 4, paste, bring it down just a little bit, and then grab that handle. Right, I'm just adding a little bit of delay in how these sort of hang on. Let's look at this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm just going to bring that back 1, just because I want it to match the others. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. Copy, 1, 2, 3, 4, paste, bring it down a little bit. Not that one. Adjust this, right? Copy that one. 1, 2, 3, 4, paste, bring it down. I don't have to always hold shift. I can adjust it this way, but just realize that when I don't, I can move it in time and in value, right? So I'm just kind of, again, I'm just putting a little delay in each one of these, and we'll see what it looks like. 1, 2, 3, 4, paste, bring it down, adjust the angle, copy, 1, 2, 3, 4, paste, grab that handle, grab the key, bring it down just a little bit, right? Because I don't want it to just stop, right? If it was flat, it would stop. But what I'm going to do is I just have a little bit of movement. It's called a moving hold, right? Copy that one, 1, 2, 3, 4, paste, bring that down a little bit, bring the key up a little bit, right? Maybe that's a little too much, but we'll figure it out. Copy that one, 1, 2, 3, 4, paste, bring that down, handle, copy, 1, 2, 3, 4, paste, twist the handle, right? So there's a lot of them to kind of go through and do this, but you're going to see how this will work out. Copy, 4, and I might just go to 3 on this one because it's slowing down, right? Don't need it to hang on too much longer. Copy, 1, 2, 3, paste, right? And then let's leave those the way they are right now. All right, and hit F on the keyboard. Hit A on the keyboard with nothing selected. All right, and now let's look at what this looks like. All right, so let's play it through, and it'll loop back around. Boom, boom, boom. And now you're going to see these are sort of hanging on just a little bit longer, just to kind of give it a little bit of a delay as the sections are swinging. And you can kind of see it's adding a little bit more of a delay, a little more life into those segments where they're just sort of hanging on as they swing up to the top, right? It's very subtle, but you can kind of see that, and I'll kind of point this out, right? When it swings this way, and this starts to swing back, right? You'll see this sort of swing up, right? And you'll see that right in there as it's holding on just a little bit longer and then starts to swing back, right? Before it would get to that point and then just start swinging. So I want it to hang on just a little bit longer and then swing, right? One last thing I want to add, and that's when the platform pulls back, you don't see any motion going on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this forward. So if this moves at 5, right, I want this one to sort of react in sort of an opposite direction, right? So I'm going to go to 3, and I'm going to just bring this back this way slightly. And I'm going to bring this one this way slightly, and this one this way slightly. So it's all going to be sort of offset just a little bit. Right, when I do that, you're going to see that there's a little bit of sort of inertia going sort of back the opposite direction. And let me move this key just a few more frames. Maybe it's going to line up to where it's going to be 5. Right, so you can kind of see, let me pull that back just a little bit more. Whoop, undo. Right, that's 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do it right there. So I'm going to pull that one back a little bit. And then S on the keyboard. Pull this one this way just a little bit. Pull this one this way just a little bit. And those I had. I didn't get the top one. So I'm going to just pull it this way just a little bit. S on the keyboard. Right? Now you're going to see it do that. Right? Which is pulling. What's happening is when the platform pulls this way, since it's backing up, it's going to pull the top of the pendulum that way. This one's not going to react that much, and this one's going to counter. So it's doing this little bit of movement to emphasize this anticipation in a movement the opposite direction. You can kind of see that just a little bit. And now let's look at the graph editor for that, just so you can see what that motion will look like. And grab all those rings, press Q on the keyboard so I'm not accidentally rotating things. And now I'm going to look at this. And so if you look at these right here, you've got one that really is just kind of going in the same direction. It kind of holds onto it a little bit longer, but these two are going back the opposite direction. And that is the top one and the bottom one. The middle one is going to kind of stay where it's at. I've just kind of put that key in to kind of let it hang out a little bit longer. Right? And you can kind of see that when you scrub forward, you could see that it sort of reacts in sort of that opposite way, and then it starts to move forward and then swings. So that's my approach to this whole swinging pendulum, and especially with it multiple segments and having it slow down with that energy at the end and eventually slow down and stop, right? And if it keeps looping, it keeps showing that. So I hope this helps. And one last thing that I'm going to show is right now it says up here 960 by 540 because I'm looking through the shot camera. And actually, I can kind of move this in just a little bit closer. But I want to make sure that I'm going to change this to be HD 720. I'm not really sure why 540 is the standard, but HD 720 is the smaller HD standard, and HD 1080 1920 by 1080 is the higher. So I'm going to choose that middle one and close. So when I play blast, it's going to be at 1280 by 720. So then I'd just play blast this and I'd have my swinging pendulum. I hope this helps and good luck with it.